You arrive with a backpack full of snacks, one portable charger, and the mistaken belief that charm and Google Translate can carry you through anything. Unfortunately, there's no signal in the 13th century, no helpful app, no QR codes, no maps that reorient when you spin in a circle, just fields, smoke in the distance, and a group of children staring at your pants like you've personally offended the concept of wool. You try smiling. One of them throws a rock. It's going to be a long day. Before we begin, please take a moment to subscribe, but only if you enjoy what I do here. Please comment. Where in the world are you listening from, and what time did you fall asleep last night? I'm always pleased to see that I'm not the only one with a terrible sleeping schedule. Now get comfortable, close your eyes, and enjoy the journey through medieval time. Your feet sink into the road, which is generous, because it's mostly just two ruts in dirt filled with centuries of regret and manure. You step around a suspicious puddle, only to discover the puddle has ambition. It's now in your shoe. That's fine. You can handle this. You've watched documentaries, you've been to Renaissance fairs, you once had a conversation with a reenactor at a cider booth. You're ready, until you smell the tannery. Then all your confidence dries up, the way your mouth does when someone mentions taxes. The village is smaller than you expected, not charmingly so, not quaint, just small. Everything leans, everything is damp. You pass a woman beating the life out of laundry with a stick, a man carrying half a pig on his shoulder, and a child chasing a chicken like it owes him money. You nod politely to all of them. No one nods back. This isn't rudeness. This is survival. Smiling wastes energy. And you, stranger with clean fingernails, are already suspect. You try to ask for directions, using your best effort at pantomime, pointing, waving, smiling again, despite earlier feedback. The man at the cart squints at you, mutters something that might be a curse or a blessing. Honestly, it could be a weather report, and goes back to stacking onions. You look around. Every building looks the same. Mud, thatch, door hanging slightly open like it's just too tired. You pick one at random and walk inside. This is apparently someone's home. A goat looks up from the hearth like you've just insulted its dinner. You back out quickly, politely. The goat is not pleased. The door swings shut behind you with a finality that suggests your Yelp review won't be glowing. You consider your options. There's no inn, no signpost, no friendly old man offering exposition, just the creeping realization that your shoes are not waterproof and your granola bars won't last the week. A crow lands nearby and tilts its head like it's judging your life choices. You tell it to mind its own business. It caws. Fair enough. Eventually, you find the market, or what passes for it. A few stalls. A lot of shouting. Something roasting that might once have been a rabbit. You drift past baskets of herbs, tubs of questionable fish, and a woman selling miracle teeth, which appear to be regular teeth, just arranged more confidently. A man grabs your sleeve and tries to sell you a pouch of something labeled simply powder. You shake your head. He insists. You leave with the pouch. You don't know what's in it, but it felt rude to say no. You finally locate the tavern, not because of a sign, but because of the sound. Laughter, music, glass shattering, someone swearing in a language you don't recognize, but absolutely feel in your bones. You step inside. It's dark. It smells like beer, smoke, and sweat that's lost its way home. Eyes turn toward you. You do your best impression of a shrug. A man near the hearth shouts, "Lost." You nod. He laughs. You've passed the test. You're not sure what it was. They give you ale. You sip it. It's thick, warm, and tastes like someone brewed it in a boot. You say, "Interesting." They cheer. You are now interesting. Someone offers you bread. It is technically bread, Someone else offers you stew. It may or may not contain root vegetables. You eat it anyway, not because you're hungry, but because refusing food here feels like the kind of mistake you only make once. Conversation flows around you, loud, fast, strange. You catch a few words: plague, taxes, witch, and nod along like you understand. A woman asks where you're from. You panic. Say south. She nods slowly. Ah, river folk. You nod more confidently. Yes, rivers. You love rivers. Very watery. She narrows her eyes, decides you're harmless, and hands you something wrapped in cloth. It's warm. You thank her. She says nothing. That's apparently the transaction. By the end of the night, you've made 3 accidental friends, promised to help with something involving pigs, and learned that ale doubles as toothpaste. You leave the tavern full, confused, and somehow already part of the fabric. The village hasn't accepted you, but it's willing to tolerate you. That's better than most places. You sleep in a loft above a barn, your head on a sack of turnips. You tell yourself it's temporary, but a voice in the back of your mind whispers, "So is everything." And as the sounds of the village settle into the kind of silence that only comes when no one has the strength to argue with the dark, you close your eyes and think, "I've survived the first day. That's more than I can say for my socks." You wake up with straw in your ear, a suspicious damp spot beneath your hip, and a turnip rolling out from under your head like it's resigning from the job of pillow. For a second, you forget where you are. Then the smell hits you: hay, sweat, animals, and a faint suggestion of despair, and it all comes back. Right. Time travel. Or a dream you haven't figured out how to end. You sit up too fast and hit your head on a beam that's been there for at least 200 years. It does not forgive you. Mira, the woman who sort of let you sleep here, is already up and carrying a bucket with the grim determination of someone who's been awake since before the concept of joy. She doesn't greet you, but she hands you a crust of bread and gestures vaguely at a trough to splash your face. You thank her. She grunts. That's probably a compliment. You wash with water that's aggressively cold and immediately regret every soft luxury you've ever taken for granted. Welcome to the 13th century. Your pores hate you. The morning air is sharp and wet, not rainy, just full of the kind of cold that clings to the edges of everything. The village is already humming. Men hauling things, women shouting at animals, children being chased by both. You see a man chopping wood with such practiced rhythm, it's almost musical. Another stirs a pot with a stick the size of your forearm. You realize no one here is not doing something. You, the pant-wearing outsider with callus-free hands, are now the laziest object in the village. You offer to help Mira. She stares at you like you've just announced you're a noble disguised as a frog. Then she shrugs and points at a pile of kindling. You carry it, slowly, carefully, like it's a test, and the kindling might explode. Mira doesn't watch. That somehow makes it worse. You stack it by the hearth and wait for instructions. She gives none, so you just sort of stand there, trying to look useful. The goat from yesterday walks past you like it's been promoted. Eventually she hands you a broom and gestures at the floor. You sweep. The dust kicks up in little clouds that smell like centuries and mushrooms. The boy, her son maybe, watches you from the corner with wide eyes and a half-bitten apple. He offers you the other half. The apple is mushy and vaguely onion-flavored. You smile anyway. He beams. Mid-morning, a bell rings in the square. You follow the sound because everyone else does, and blending in seems wiser than wandering. The square is full of people and noise and carts. Someone is selling bread, someone else is selling pots, and someone else is just yelling about soap, like it's a rare gemstone. You try not to look lost, which is difficult when you're literally the only person wearing laces. A merchant catches your eye and gestures toward a bowl of berries. You nod. He hands you one. You eat it. Then he says something sharp and holds out his hand. Right. Nothing's free. You offer him a button. A real shiny modern button. He takes it reverently, holds it up to the light, smiles like you just handed him fire. Then he hands you 3 more berries. You eat them quickly and walk away before he changes his mind. A small victory. You tell yourself you're bartering like a pro. You are, in fact, bartering like a man who will be barefoot by the end of the week. Someone pulls you aside. An old woman with a back like a question mark. She starts talking fast, gesturing wildly at a sack and pointing at your chest. You understand none of it, but you nod, always nod. She hands you the sack. You take it. She points at a hut across the road and smacks your arm. Delivery job, apparently. You carry the sack. It smells like dried fish and regret. The recipient is a man with one eye and no patience. He grunts, takes the sack, hands you a boiled egg. You accept it like a diplomat receiving a peace offering. You don't eat it, yet, back at the barn, Mira seems surprised to see you return with dirt on your boots and fish on your sleeves. She asks something. You shrug. She snorts, hands you a bowl of stew. You eat it without asking what's in it. The broth is rich. The meat is chewy. You decide not to investigate further. The boy sits beside you and draws in the dirt with a stick. He draws a person with very long legs. You think it's you. He draws a goat, kicking that person. You know it's you. Afternoon fades fast here. Shadows stretch like they're trying to reach tomorrow early. Mira starts prepping the evening meal. You fetch water, chop roots, and try not to set anything on fire. The boy shows you how to tie a bundle of sticks for burning. His fingers move fast. Yours don't. He laughs. You let him. Mira watches without comment. That's her way of saying, you didn't ruin anything today. High praise. As dusk rolls in with smoke from every chimney and the promise of cold in its teeth, you sit outside the barn on a stool that creaks like it's heard too many stories. Ember flops at your feet, clearly deciding you're not a threat. The sky turns purple and orange and something else you can't name. For a moment, the whole village hums in sync, fires glowing, voices soft, animals quiet. It feels almost peaceful. And just before the dark swallows everything, you whisper to no one in particular, I didn't die. I didn't ruin anything. I even got paid in an egg. And in a place like this, that makes you practically a success story. You wake up in the middle of the night because something is snoring directly into your spine. It takes you a moment to realize it's not a person, it's Ember, who has apparently decided your lower back is now his personal mattress. You try to shift. He growls. You apologize. He stretches. You spend the next hour lying still as a saint and questioning every life decision that led you to being spooned by a medieval barn dog with boundary issues. By morning, you're already tired. Mira hands you a piece of bread that's so hard it might legally qualify as weaponry. You gnaw at it anyway while she stokes the fire with the kind of intensity that makes you wonder if she's imagining someone's face in the embers. The boy is chasing a chicken in circles again, and the chicken is winning by a wide margin. You sip lukewarm tea and mentally prepare yourself for a day of pretending you know what you're doing. Today you're taken to the fields. No warning, no briefing. Mira just hands you a basket and starts walking, and you follow her like a loyal, confused retriever. The fields are vast, quiet, and smell like grass trying not to die. You're assigned to pull weeds. You do this badly. Mira doesn't correct you. She just moves further down the row. That feels worse. You eventually find a rhythm, bend, pull, sigh, question your existence, repeat. You pause to stretch your back and catch a glimpse of the horizon, hazy hills, a winding stream, smoke curling up from distant chimneys. It's the kind of view that would look great on a postcard. You feel a weird mix of awe and resentment. It's beautiful, but it's also hungry. This place demands something from you. Every hour, every movement. You wonder if beauty always hides its sharp edges in plain sight. Lunch is turnip stew again. Myra says it tastes better today. You nod. She's wrong. But the warmth of it feels like something close to kindness. The boy adds wild herbs he found in the hedgerow. Myra raises an eyebrow. You eat it anyway. The boy watches with glee. Myra watches with concern. You survive. Barely. You've now passed the third test of medieval survival. Eat things you can't pronounce, identify, or smell without flinching. After lunch, you're invited, no conscripted, into helping repair the roof of the neighbor's hut. You have no idea how roofs work. You express this. No one cares. You're handed a bundle of thatch and a grim nod. Climbing a ladder made of old bones and spit, you try not to look down or sideways. You tie, tuck, and pretend. At some point, someone mutters something approving. You take it as a medal. A rooster walks under the ladder, and everyone gasps like death itself has walked into the yard. You're told this is very bad luck. You ask what kind of luck it is if you fall and break your neck after the rooster walks under the ladder. Mira says, "Stupid luck." Fair enough. You finish your part, climb down, and kiss the ground when no one's watching. Ember licks your face. You take that as forgiveness. Evening comes quickly. The sky turns lavender. The light gets that soft, sideways quality that makes everything look like it's remembering something. Mira cooks rice tonight. Real rice. Not the usual mash. You don't ask how she got it. You just eat slowly, with reverence, as the boy tells a story about a hero with a magical goat. Mira listens without correcting him. She even smiles. A little. That means the story is sacred. After dinner, you help clean the pots with cold water and rough cloth. Your hands go numb, but your brain settles. The silence between you and Mira is almost companionable now. She doesn't flinch when you hand her the cleaned bowl. She just nods. Ember snores. The boy hums. The world doesn't end. It just gets quieter. You sit outside while they settle in. The stars are coming out in slow clusters, like they're shy. There's no light pollution, no distant hum of engines, just crickets, wind, and the distant sound of someone yelling at a pig. You wrap your coat tighter and stare at the moon like it might remember your name. It doesn't. And as you drift off to sleep again, head on a sack of straw, and Ember slowly reclaiming your spine, you whisper to yourself, "I didn't ruin the roof. I survived the stew. I might even be useful now." And in a world where usefulness is currency, you've just earned your first real coin. You wake up to someone shouting about fire. Not a big fire, just a chimney one. Caught quick, handled quicker. Still, nothing jolts the soul like hearing fire before sunrise. Especially when your entire existence is stuffed into a barn built before perspective. You fling off the blanket, whack your knee on a beam, and run outside shoeless, breath visible, heart staging a coup. The fire turns out to be a smoking oven and a very dramatic baker who enjoys the spotlight. You sit down in the mud and quietly rethink your relationship with panic. Mira walks past you, holding a basket of turnips like it's a royal decree. She doesn't acknowledge the fire, your panic, or your lack of shoes. She just says, "Fetch water." You nod like this is normal. Ember follows you to the well, sniffing at every rock as though one might be edible. You draw water with arms still sore from yesterday and feel a tiny swell of pride. The rope no longer burns your palms, just tingles. Progress. Back in the yard, the boy has constructed what he calls a bird trap. It's made of twigs, string, and wild hope. You ask him what he plans to do with the bird once caught. He says, "Tell its secrets." Mira overhears and mutters, "And then eat it." You tell the boy some birds aren't meant to be eaten. He considers this, then adjusts the trap to be less convincing. Mercy through poor engineering. an underrated form of compassion. You help clean the barn next. Not metaphorically, actual barn cleaning. You shovel things you don't want to name and discover, smells your brain will spend the rest of the day trying to forget. The cow stares at you like she knows your shame. You apologize to her anyway. Mira hands you a bundle of fresh straw and tells you to put it like it matters. You do, mostly because you're afraid not to. A stranger arrives in the afternoon, tall, wears his cloak like it was tailored by someone with opinions, speaks slowly, like every word costs coin. He's selling tinctures and salves and something labeled root for courage. Mira buys none of it. But the boy listens like this man is a prophet. You lean in too, curious, despite yourself. The man offers you a sample, some thick, greenish paste that smells like mint and secrets. You politely decline. Mira buys dried mint later and says, "Now that's courage." Lunch is thin soup with barley and slices of mushroom that may or may not be local. Mira insists she knows where they came from. You choose to trust her, because starvation is worse than uncertainty. The boy says it tastes like warm forest. You think that's a compliment. Ember gets a mushroom and immediately regrets it. Mira smacks him with a spoon. He sneezes in protest and stalks off like a betrayed noble. You spend the afternoon helping patch a fence that's less barrier and more polite suggestion to wandering livestock. Tom joins you, chewing on a stalk of something and talking about how fences are lies. They only work if the animals believe in them. You nod like that makes sense. It does, sort of. At one point you hammer your thumb and use words you didn't know you remembered. Mira hears them, doesn't correct you, just mutters. Now you sound local. As the light fades, the baker, yes, the morning fire yeller, drops off a loaf as thanks for helping fix her chimney stone. It's dense, cracked, and smells amazing. Mira slices it like it's a treaty. The boy calls it castle bread. Kember tries to steal a piece and is rebuffed with a firm boot. You eat yours slowly, savoring every chew. Mira pretends not to watch you eat the crust. She's pleased, which is to say she doesn't scowl. The boy asks if people in the South, your vague and ever-flexible homeland, eat bread like this. You say only on special days, Mira says. Then make today special. You laugh. She doesn't. She's serious. You declare this bread day. The boy claps. Ember burps. Mira smirks. The fire cracks. For a moment, you almost forget this isn't where you're from. You sit outside after supper, picking straw from your sleeves, watching the smoke rise into the dark like it has somewhere to be. The stars blink slowly overhead, older than everything around you and still somehow surprised to see you here. Ember settles beside you. You scratch his ear. He sighs like he's decided you're all right. That feels better than most compliments. You head in when the air starts to bite. Mira's already asleep. The boy's curled like a comma around the dog. You lie on your straw mat and stretch just enough to feel sore in 6 places. You think about how, back home your calendar was full but your days were empty. Now you've done more before noon than you used to in a week. You whisper to yourself, "I earned my crust today, and it tasted like something I could build a life out of." You wake before the sun, not by choice. Something's chirping in your ear with the persistence of a guilt-ridden conscience. You swat blindly, only to discover it's not a bird. It's the boy, gently poking your temple with a stick. "Time to check the traps," he says. "Beaming like this is Christmas, and not whatever miserable chill-soaked day this is." Ember lifts his head, yawns, and immediately goes back to sleep. You envy his boundaries. You do not share them. You crawl out from under the blanket, like a mollusk from its shell, bones creaking in protest. The fire's out again. Mira is not in the house, which means she's already done 3 hours of work and will expect the same from you before breakfast. You grab your coat, Jam your feet into boots that are now more hole than structure, and follow the boy outside. The air smells like wet grass and old stones. It's not unpleasant, just medieval. The traps are, to put it gently, hopeful. A few string snares, a basket propped on a stick, and something that looks like it was designed by a squirrel with anxiety. You admire the effort. The boy inspects them like a general on campaign. One trap has caught a bird. The boy gasps in reverence. You hesitate. It's small, feathered, alive, looking at you like it knows you don't belong here. The boy offers to wring its neck. You say, "Let's give it one more day." He nods, not understanding, but letting you have this small mercy. Back at the hut, Mira is kneading dough with the sort of energy most people reserve for vengeance. You offer to help. She hands you a bowl of water and points at a pile of greens. You wash. Badly. She corrects you once, then never again. That's how you know you failed with distinction. The boy brings in the bird and lets it go in the corner. Mira says nothing, but she adds an extra slice of root to your bowl later. That's her version of soft. Breakfast is bread and greens, warm and dense, served in silence. Mira's clearly thinking about something, probably how to make the ceiling stop dripping. The boy talks about building a windmill. You nod like that's reasonable. Ember sneezes under the table, and Mira curses softly, something about fleas and cursed straw. You itch your leg reflexively. It's already too late. After breakfast, you're sent to the stream to wash clothes. It's not a suggestion. Mira points to the bundle and waves you out the door, like she's releasing a very underqualified bird into the wild. The stream is cold enough to make your fingers consider mutiny. You scrub awkwardly, while two older women watch you with the kind of amusement normally reserved for drunk dancing. You nod politely. They nod back. One offers you a tip about soap root. The other offers you dried fish. You accept both with gratitude and confusion. You dry the clothes by draping them on a hedge that may or may not be sacred, depending on who you ask. One old man passing by scowls and mutters a prayer under his breath. The other just farts and keeps walking. You take that as a blessing. When the clothes are mostly dry and entirely wrinkled, you fold them like you're pretending your life is orderly. Mira later refolds every item without comment, which is somehow worse than being yelled at. Lunch is cold porridge and warm cider, shared under a tree that's pretending to have leaves. Mira doesn't talk much, but she does slide the last spoonful of honey your way when the boy isn't looking. You don't say thank you. You just eat it with reverence and the posture of someone who knows better than to make a big deal of rare kindness. Ember lies across your foot. It's the warmest you've been all day. That afternoon, you're told to deliver a message to a man named Corvin in the next village. Mira gives you a strip of leather with a symbol etched in it. "Don't lose it," she says. You ask what it means. "Means I vouch for you," she says. Then she adds, "Not forever." You walk down the winding road, trying not to overthink how much it feels like carrying your own passport, made of hope and obligation. The next village is only a mile off, but it feels like a century. The road dips, then rises, then turns suddenly through trees that whisper things you can't quite catch. You pass a woman carrying firewood on her back, and she doesn't look at you. You pass a man leading a cow that looks smarter than its owner. You arrive with sore feet and no sense of what comes next. Corvin is waiting by a gate, arms crossed, beard like a bird's nest. "Mira's?" he asks. You nod. He grunts. "You've passed." You return with a bag of flour, a folded note, and a piece of cheese that's older than you are. Mira opens the bag, reads the note, nods once. "You didn't die," she says. "That's good." Then she goes back to peeling something unidentifiable. The boy asks if the other village has dragons. You say no, but maybe a wizard. He's delighted. Ember barks, then throws up a feather. You decide not to ask. That night, you lie in your spot by the fire, arms behind your head, full in that specific way that comes from surviving, contributing and eating something you didn't have to steal. You watch Mira tuck the boy in and mutter something that might be a prayer. Ember circles twice and flops across your legs. And as sleep tiptoes in like it doesn't want to be caught, you smile faintly and whisper, "If I had a postcard, I'd write 'still alive.' Wish you were here." You wake to thunder that isn't thunder. It's Mira slamming a wooden door because someone left it cracked and the wind got ideas. Rain's already begun, the kind that doesn't pour so much as press, like the sky decided to lean on you. You roll out of your corner of the barn, Ember still asleep, one leg twitching in some canine dream of superiority. The boy's curled in a blanket, like a croissant, that snores. You sit up slowly and think, rain day. Maybe it means rest. It doesn't. It never does. Mira hands you a bundle of wet laundry and points to the line. You look outside, look at the rain, then look at her. She shrugs like gravity, like weather, like inevitability. So you hang the laundry in the rain. Because this isn't about logic, it's about rhythm. You learn quickly that the point is not to dry things. It's to remind them they could have been dry once. You whisper to the socks, like a man delivering last rites. The yard is mud, not ordinary mud. This is prestige mud, stickier than memory, colder than regret, and convinced your boots owe it rent. You trudge through it to the water barrel and find it already full. You tip the lid and immediately get splashed in the face by something that smells like moss and disappointment. Mira watches from under the awning and doesn't laugh, but her eyebrow does a little dance of judgment. You bow theatrically. She rolls her eyes. You count that as bonding. Inside, the fire is struggling. Mira feeds it like she's daring it to survive. You sit nearby, wringing out your sleeves. The boy presents you with a gift, a small carved object that looks like either a horse or a turnip with legs. You accept it like it's sacred. Tell him it's the finest craftsmanship you've seen all day. He beams. Mira snorts into her cup. Ember wanders in, shakes mud all over the floor, and then has the audacity to look proud. Lunch is root stew with too much pepper and not enough optimism. You eat it anyway. The boy talks about wanting to build a boat. Mira mutters, "First learn to float." You suggest maybe you could carve something too, if someone lends you a knife and doesn't mind replacing it when you ruin it. Mira almost smiles. You ruin it, you sleep in the coop. You nod solemnly. That feels fair. After the meal, you help sort beans. Not metaphorically actual beans, each one inspected like it holds a grudge. You, Mira, and the boy sit in a triangle around a low table, fingers moving, eyes scanning. It's meditative, in a strangely fragile way. You start to relax. That's when the pot spills. 50 beans scatter across the floor like they're trying to escape medieval capitalism. Ember pounces, slips, and knocks over the rest. Mira says a word. You didn't know she knew. You say it too. You feel closer. The rain intensifies. The roof drips. The boy sets up bowls to catch the leaks and names them like pets. One is Drip. One is Drip's brother. One is King Water. Mira stirs the fire and mutters that King Water can pay rent or leave. You add a log, just to stay useful. The warmth fills the hut unevenly, but it's better than nothing. You wrap yourself in a blanket that smells like last week and dirt. It's comforting, mostly. The stranger comes again, this time with fabrics. Bright ones? Silks, maybe? Stolen or traded? Hard to say. He lets the boy touch them, but glares when you reach out. Mira buys nothing. She says silk is for weddings and burials, and she has no plans for either. You notice she lingers on a dark red piece, longer than the rest. You don't mention it. Some softness is private. As night approaches, you're told to help move the chickens. No explanation, just an order. You learn quickly that chickens don't negotiate, they don't listen, and they don't forget. By the time you're done, you've been pecked twice and insulted in several dialects of cluck. Mira hands you a rag for the blood. The boy gives you a feather. You earned it, he says. You tuck it behind your ear. Why not? Dinner is stale bread, dipped in warm broth. No one complains. You all sit by the fire, each lost in your own weather. Mira mends something. The boy sketches with charcoal on wood. Ember chases a fly and loses. You sip your broth and stare at the drip from the ceiling, now falling directly into king water. You feel weirdly proud of the naming system. You helped build that empire. Later, in the dark, with your feet tucked under Ember and your head on a sack of millet, you whisper to yourself, I did nothing spectacular today. And yet, you're full of food, of warmth, of something that might be belonging. And as the rain presses on the roof, like it's trying to hear what you're dreaming, you smile and think. Some days, surviving is the story. You wake to quiet, not silence. That doesn't exist here, but a sort of rural truce between the chickens, the wind and whoever usually screams at dawn. It's unsettling. Mira isn't moving. Ember isn't snoring. The boy is still bundled like a tiny king, one foot sticking out from under his blanket like a declaration of peace. You sit up and stretch, slowly, as if the day might not notice you're awake. Your back cracks in 3 distinct places. That's your body's way of applauding the effort. Mira eventually appears with her hair tied back and a look that says sleep is optional, and you chose poorly. She hands you a small bucket and says, River. You nod. She means laundry, or drinking water, or punishment. You don't ask. She's already halfway out the door by the time you grab your boots. Ember finally stirs and yawns like this is a massive inconvenience to his schedule. You resist the urge to explain how unfair that is. The path to the river is slick with mud, and something that might be ash or might be history. You step carefully, gripping the bucket like it's full even when it's not. On the way, you pass the neighbor's goats standing in the road like they own it. They don't move, you detour. The goats watch you like they're taking notes for some future tribunal. At the river, the water runs fast and cold, cutting through the land like it doesn't care who's listening. You fill the bucket and try not to fall in. You mostly succeed. Back at the hut, Mira is gutting a fish with the same precision she uses to judge you. The boy is telling Ember a story that involves a talking frog and a queen who sneezes gold. You sit and watch for a minute, wondering when that kind of imagination stopped visiting your mornings. Mira catches your gaze and tosses you a cloth. Clean the fish. Don't ruin it. You ruin only part of it, progress. Breakfast is fish stew with greens and some kind of root that crunches like guilt. You eat it slowly. The boy eats it quickly. Ember tries to eat everyone's. Mira blocks him with a ladle and a look. You offer to take the dishes. She lets you, washing them in the cold basin outside. You realize your fingers no longer go numb after 2 minutes. They wait until 5. You hum a victory tune and the chickens stare like you're performing sacrilege. A merchant passes through around midday. Cart, donkey, collection of jars that may or may not contain preserved food or body parts. Mira trades a pair of eggs and half a spool of thread for something wrapped in waxed cloth. You don't ask. Later she opens it and you see dried peaches. She gives one to the boy, one to you, and none to herself. You break yours in half and give it back to her without a word. She doesn't refuse. That's how you know it mattered. You spend the afternoon mending the roof again. Mira insists it's not leaking, but you hear the lie in her voice and feel the drip in your sleep. She hands you a bundle of reeds and a knife that's seen better centuries. You climb up and pretend to know what you're doing. The view from the top is all sky and smudge gray rooftops, people the size of regrets moving below. For a second, it feels like you're above the past. Then the wind shifts and the smell of manure reminds you where you are. Back on solid ground, the boy asks if you've ever ridden a horse. You tell him, honestly, no. He says, you should learn in case we get famous. Mira says nothing, but her smirk suggests she already doubts your hero arc. You ask the boy if Ember counts as a horse. He nods solemnly. Ember farts. You take that as a yes. Dinner is a kind of mash that defies description. Mira says it's made of everything else. The boy calls it ghost food. You chew it like it might bite back. It doesn't. Ember sniffs it and walks away. Mira finishes her bowl without flinching. You follow her lead. Afterward, the boy finds a mouse in the grain sack and names it Dennis. Mira says Dennis has until sunrise. As the fire crackles and Ember curls around Mira's feet, the boy draws something in ash, a tall figure with arms too long and feet too big. You ask who it is. He says it's you. Mira says, needs more mud. The boy adds a streak across the figure's face. You smile. You feel placed, not welcomed, not celebrated, but included. Like a tool that hasn't broken yet. You lie down that night under a roof you patched, near a boy who trusts you, and a woman who, against her better judgment, hasn't thrown you out. The stars outside flicker through gaps in the beams, tiny sparks above a world still held together with twine and spit and stubbornness. And as your eyes close, you think, I may not belong, but I've stopped asking where else I should be. You wake to fog. Not a poetic rolling mist kind of fog. This is the kind that sits in your mouth and ears and shirt collar, like the air got tired of staying outside and decided to be personal. Mira's already up, boiling water and muttering at the stove like it owes her rent. The boy is still asleep, curled in a bundle so tight he looks like laundry that gave up. Ember's nose is twitching in his dreams, chasing something that probably deserves it. You sit up, exhale, and feel the fog move. It's going to be one of those days. You help gather kindling, which mostly means finding damp twigs and trying not to call them what they are, lies. Every stick looks fine until it snaps like disappointment. Mira tosses yours aside, without comment, and replaces them with a stack she found in half the time. You pretend not to notice. You've learned to lose with grace. Ember follows you, tail swishing, nose to the dirt, occasionally barking at invisible threats. You're starting to suspect he knows more than anyone else here. Breakfast is porridge again. Mira adds dried herbs. The boy calls it swamp stew and eats it with enthusiasm that doesn't match the flavor. You chew carefully, pretending it tastes like something you once had at a tourist cafe that charged extra for authenticity. Mira eats fast. She's got plans. You just don't know what they are yet. She hands you a bucket and a sickle and says, field. You nod like that makes sense. It doesn't. You go anyway. The field is wide, damp, and filled with grass that doesn't want to cooperate. You cut poorly. Mira cuts beside you with the precision of someone who's been fighting plants her whole life. The boy collects bundles and arranges them like trophies. You try not to compare your pile to Mira's. You fail. The wind picks up around midday and the fog lifts just enough to remind you that the sun is still under contract. You pause for a drink from the stream and nearly fall in again. Mira laughs. Not a full one, just a breathy, surprised exhale, but it's enough. The boy slips once too. You grab his arm. He says, you're strong now. You say, just lucky. Mira says, same thing. You dry your sleeves on grass and pretend you're not freezing. The boy offers you half a plum. It's sour and small and maybe stolen. You eat it like it's dessert. Back at the hut, you help repair the door latch. It's been loose for days. Mira finally trusts you with the knife. That feels like something. You carve the new peg clumsily, fit it into place, and test the swing. It sticks slightly. You grin anyway. Mira grunts approval. The boy gives it a name, Sir Clutchington. You salute it. Ember sneezes at it. Ceremony complete. You spend the afternoon helping Tom slaughter a chicken. You were not emotionally prepared for this. You try to stay useful, holding bowls, fetching water, not fainting. Mira joins halfway through and takes over without blinking. The chicken dies quickly, efficiently. You feel weird about it, then worse about feeling weird, then quietly grateful for every anonymous meal you've ever eaten. The boy isn't allowed to watch. He peeks anyway. Tom pays you in potatoes, real ones. Mira pockets 2 before you get ideas. You joke about opening a shop, she says. You'd starve, you agree. But you line the potatoes up on the shelf like trophies. The boy arranges them into a family. Ember tries to eat the littlest one. Mira smacks him with a spoon. Balance is restored. Dinner is stew, obviously. But now with potato. The boy cheers. Mira eats in silence, but her eyes are softer than usual. You take the last spoonful with reverence. You're full in a way that has nothing to do with food. The room smells like earth, smoke, and something else, earned comfort. Ember licks the bowl. Mira lets him. You don't mention it. Later you sit outside. The fog's gone. The stars are back. You recognize none of them. You name one anyway. Call it almost home. The boy joins you, blanket over his head, whispering nonsense about dream maps and sky doors. You listen. You believe him a little. Mira leans in the doorway, arms folded, watching both of you like she's measuring something. You meet her gaze. She doesn't look away. And as the night thickens and the air finally remembers how to be still, you stretch your legs, tilt your head back, and whisper, I didn't know it could feel like this. And maybe I don't need to. For now, this is enough. Not perfect, not yours, but enough. You wake up to the sound of arguing geese. You don't know what the fight is about, but you're definitely losing it. One of them honks directly at the barn wall, like it's personally offended by architecture. Mira's already out, likely solving 3 problems before you can name one. The boy is gone too, probably with Ember, probably causing small and sincere mischief. You sit up slowly, feeling every joint complain in its own language. Welcome to another medieval morning where your alarm clock hisses and bites. The fire is low, but still alive. You poke at it with a stick and pretend you know what you're doing. Mira walks in mid-poke, takes the stick, and fixes it without breaking eye contact. You nod, like you've contributed to the concept of fire itself. She tosses you a small piece of bread and says, mark it today. You chew the bread like it's not made from pebbles and intent. Then you nod again. Mark it. Sounds like a field trip. You grab your coat and your last surviving sock. The road is muddy, full of tracks and smells you don't want to analyze. You walk behind Mira and the boy, carrying the trade goods, a bundle of dried herbs, a stitched cloth, and something in a jar that you suspect used to be alive. Mira says very little. The boy says everything. Ember walks beside you like your furry legal guardian, tail twitching with judgment. The village market is a mile away, but it feels like crossing into a different world. The market smells like onions, sweat, smoke, and hope. Loud voices hawk goods you can't identify. Everyone has something to sell and no time for your confusion. You follow Mira like a duckling who speaks the wrong dialect. She haggles with a woman selling root vegetables, gestures at your jacket like it's part of the deal, and somehow walks away with a wheel of cheese and an apple. You have no idea how. You hold the apple reverently. You're left alone at one stall while Mira disappears to check prices, which is code for do something important without the deadweight. You stand awkwardly between a man selling goat milk and a girl aggressively offering socks. The boy is already eating something. Mira definitely didn't approve. Ember's gone. You hope he's not eating anyone's lunch. You trade your shoelace, yes, your actual shoelace, for a piece of smoked fish. You're both ashamed and proud. Mira finds you chewing beside the well. She doesn't ask what you traded. She sees the fish and raises an eyebrow. Expensive shoelace. You say, limited edition. She shakes her head but doesn't confiscate it. You call that progress. The boy asks for a bite. You give him the last one. He declares you a hero of snacks. Mira rolls her eyes and hands you a bundle. Carry this, hero. The way back is quieter. The boy is sleepy. Mira is focused. And you're trying not to drop whatever mystery is wrapped in the cloth on your shoulder. Ember reappears from nowhere. Wet, muddy, and extremely proud of himself. Mira mutters something about bathing him in vinegar. You choose not to ask. You walk slower than usual, partly to stay upright, partly to make the walk last. You've started to like the space between places. Back home, Mira unpacks the bundle. Herbs, beans, something she won't name, and starts sorting with the precision of a person who doesn't waste even small things. You offer to help. She doesn't answer, just pushes a bowl your way. You take it, because that is the answer. The boy disappears to invent soup. You're unsure if that's culinary or philosophical. Ember sleeps on your foot, like it's his job. Dinner is the apple, split 3 ways, and a soup that tastes mostly like boiling. The boy insists he helped. Mira doesn't correct him. You eat slowly, not because it's delicious, though it's not bad, but because it feels wrong to rush a meal made from effort. The fire burns hotter tonight. Maybe the market firewood was blessed. Maybe Mira just finally taught it respect. Afterward, you help clean. Mira says little. You say less. The boy is curled in the corner with Ember, drawing something in the dust. Mira watches them with a look that's half love, half exhaustion. You ask her if the market was good. She says, "We still have what matters." You don't know if she means the apple, or the soup, or the boy. Maybe all of it. You step outside before bed. The sky is clear, cold, sharp. Stars spread like promises you can't name. You lean against the doorframe, pull your coat tight, and listen to the nothing between sounds that only exists in places this old. And as you exhale steam and hear Mira moving behind you, and the boy's soft sleep sounds, you think, I used to think peace would feel louder. But maybe peace just feels like staying. You wake to the sound of Mira sharpening a blade. It's not menacing, just matter-of-fact, rhythmic. The kind of sound that says the day is already moving, and you've been left behind. You sit up slowly, pulling straw from your hair and something suspiciously crunchy from your sleeve. Ember is chewing on what looks like half of your sock. You let him. He's earned it. The boy is already outside, yelling at the sun to get up faster. You envy that kind of confidence. Mira hands you a list, not a written one, just a verbal assault of tasks, delivered with her usual clarity. Fix the fence, collect eggs, check the snare, don't be useless. You nod through it like you're being knighted. She hands you bread with one hand and a hammer with the other. You eat fast. The bread is better today. Not less stale, just less surprised, to still be bread. You pat Ember on the head. He burps ominously. You take that as encouragement. The fence is a disaster. One side leans like it's made of tired knees. You try propping it with a stick, then a rock, then pure willpower. None of them work. You eventually lash the worst bit to a tree stump and pray the goats don't notice. One of them watches you the entire time, chewing grass slowly, with judgment. You salute it anyway. It doesn't salute back. That's fine. Goats are famously proud. You check the snares and find nothing, not even a feather. You feel a weird mixture of relief and disappointment. You leave a small piece of bread in one, just in case. Not as bait, more like an apology. Back at the coop, you discover the hens have staged a coup. They refuse to leave their perch and peck at you like you owe them something. Mira eventually appears, snatches 2 eggs from beneath them with one hand, and walks off like she just performed a miracle. You consider applauding. The boy wants to build a catapult. You ask what for. He says, just in case. You nod because that's a flawless reason. He finds 2 planks and a springy branch. You help him tie it together with a strip of cloth from your ruined sock. Ember tests it by sitting on it. The boy launches a turnip 6 feet. You both cheer. Mira sighs. But later, you notice she moved the contraption under the eaves out of the rain. You say nothing. Lunch is surprisingly decent. Root mash with bits of salted meat that Mira refuses to discuss. The boy calls it warrior food. You agree. Mira rolls her eyes. But she gives you an extra scoop. Ember gets a lick of the pot. He licks it like it insulted his ancestors. The fire burns hotter than usual, and for a moment you actually feel warm, not just in your coat, but somewhere beneath it. That afternoon, you and Mira carry wood from the edge of the forest. It's a quiet walk, not uncomfortable, just full of the kind of silence that holds shape. She doesn't ask questions. You don't offer answers. But when you stumble on a rock and drop your bundle, she stops and helps you restack it. No words, just hands, working together. That feels bigger than any conversation. Back home, the boy has added wheels to the catapult. It now moves, poorly. Ember is terrified of it and hides under the bench. Mira pretends not to be impressed. You patch your sock with a needle that bends and thread that frays. The sock ends up worse than when you started. Mira watches you finish, takes it gently, and mends it again without a word. You think about saying thank you. You don't. You just put it back on. Dinner is stew again, this time with a handful of something green and mysterious. Mira calls it not poison. The boy adds more salt than is legal. Ember watches the bowl like a hawk with manners. You eat slowly. The warmth pools in your belly like someone's telling you you did all right today. Mira eats in silence. The boy talks until he falls asleep on the mat with one foot still in the bowl. You carefully remove it. That's parenting now, apparently. Later, Mira asks if you miss your place. You say sometimes. She nods. Must have been easier. You don't answer. Not because she's wrong, but because you're not sure she's right either. The ease of something doesn't mean it filled you. It just means it didn't fight back. Here, everything fights back, but at least you know you're alive. And as the fire burns low, and Ember sighs into his sleep, you lie down with a patched sock, a full belly, and a faint bruise from a catapult test gone wrong. And you think, this is the longest I've stayed anywhere, and wanted to wake up again. And somehow that feels like the most honest thing you've thought in years. You wake up to cold air and the distinct smell of onions frying in old fat. Your stomach growls before you even open your eyes. Ember is already awake, staring at you with the focused intensity of a creature who knows breakfast is imminent and considers you a delivery mechanism. The boy is humming again, something off-key and joyful. And Mira's voice cuts through the room. If you want some, move. You move. Fast. Cold floors be damned. Breakfast is a kind of onion cake. Flat, oily, and slightly burnt. You eat it like it's treasure. The boy devours his and asks for more. Mira says, learn to cook. Then, he sighs dramatically and announces he'll become a chef warrior. You tell him that sounds terrifying. Ember gets the crusts. Mira hands you a half-full bucket and says, stream. You nod. Your version of morning coffee is now carrying heavy water uphill. Your spine disapproves, loudly. At the stream, you pause a little longer than you need to. The water's clear today, glittering like it's trying to apologize for being freezing. You splash your face, listen to the birds argue in the trees, and for a moment, the world feels soft. No sounds of cars, no buzzing phones, no rush, just you, your breath, and a squirrel with boundary issues watching from a branch. You carry the water back like it's more than water. Maybe it is. Mira's sorting beans when you return. The good ones go in a jar. The bad ones go to the chickens. You sit beside her and start sorting. Slowly, carefully. Like every bean is a decision. The boy walks past with a stick he claims is a sword and challenges Ember to a duel. Ember growls, then rolls over. Victory by surrender. Mira smiles just a little. You pretend not to notice. Smiling here is like currency, used carefully. Later, you help repair a section of the thatch roof that started to droop. Mira climbs the ladder like it owes her money. You hand her reeds, tools, bits of twine. She doesn't say much, but she doesn't correct you either. That's a win. The sky is heavy with clouds but holds back. You keep checking it anyway. Old habits. Mira finally says, "It won't rain yet." You ask how she knows. She says, "It's waiting for something." You believe her without understanding. Lunch is flatbread with mashed root and something that might be pickled turnip. You eat it like you're grateful, and you are. The boy eats with his mouth open and tells you that if you ever leave, he'll name the catapult after you. You tell him that's an honor. Mira smirks. Might be the first thing you've built that works. You raise your cup in mock salute. Ember tries to drink from it. Mira swats him. Everyone's roles are secure. The neighbor drops by to ask for help, digging out a blocked drainage ditch. You go, not because it's your job, but because now, somehow, it is. The ditch is half water, half sludge, and all resistance. You and Tom dig in silence, broken only by the occasional curse or frog. He says you've got a good back for labor. You tell him you had a desk once. He laughs like that's the most absurd confession he's ever heard. By the time you return, your hands are stained and your shoulders ache in ways that feel earned. Mira nods when she sees you, hands you a bowl of broth without asking. The boy tells you Ember tried to steal a turnip and failed. He's fast, but not clever, he says. Mira mutters, like most men. You raise your eyebrows. She doesn't deny it. Fair enough. Dinner is quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't demand filling, just warmth. Mira eats slowly. The boy falls asleep with a spoon in his hand. Ember snores. You watch the fire and wonder how much of this is real, not the place you in it. You're starting to blend in, starting to forget your other life didn't have goats or buckets or days that felt this full. Later, as you lie back, you trace the knots in the rafters with your eyes. Mira's still awake, mending something she doesn't need to explain. The fire crackles. The wind whispers at the shutters but doesn't find its way in. You shift under the blanket and whisper, mostly to yourself, "I didn't come here to belong, but maybe I stayed because I do." You wake to bird song, not the delicate kind that makes poets cry. This is aggressive, full-throated early morning opera from a creature 2 ounces heavy and carrying the wrath of a tax collector. You throw a stick at the rafters. It misses. The bird wins. Ember lifts his head, sighs, and resumes being furniture. The boy is already outside, yelling something about sky worms and carrying a bucket that's definitely too heavy. You stretch, slowly. The floor is cold. Your joints are colder. Welcome back to the 14th century. Mira is stoking the fire like it insulted her mother. She points at the bench. You sit. She hands you a chunk of bread and a strip of dried meat, so tough it could legally be used as armor. You chew it anyway. Breakfast, like most things here, is more about perseverance than pleasure. The boy bursts in holding a worm the size of your finger. "For fishing," he says proudly. Mira tells him to wash his hands. He doesn't. You pretend not to notice. You're sent to the woods today. The trees loom in that way only old forests do, tall, quiet, slightly judging. You're with Tom, who speaks like he was born tired and only recently discovered sarcasm. You gather fallen branches, some mushrooms that Mira trusts and you don't, and a sack of moss, for reasons never clarified. You slip once and fall into a bush that smells like regret. Tom helps you up and says, "Now you're baptized." You thank him. He's not wrong. On the way back, you find a rusted horseshoe. You hold it up like treasure. Tom shrugs. "Luck's overrated." Still, you bring it back. The boy is delighted. Ember tries to chew it. Mira hangs it on a nail near the door. No comment. That's how you know it mattered. You sit on the step, brushing mud off your sleeves, watching the sky pretend it doesn't know what rain is. Mira tosses you a cloth. You smell like tree. You consider that a compliment. Lunch is soup, again. But this time there's actual flavor, wild garlic maybe, and something Mira won't name. You eat 2 bowls. The boy claims his third made him stronger. He lifts a log to prove it. It's mostly bark. You clap anyway. Mira watches this circus with narrowed eyes and soft edges. Ember steals a crust and is forgiven immediately. You wonder if that's loyalty or a well-timed survival instinct. The afternoon drags in, a good way. Mira mends a basket. You whittle a spoon that's more philosophical concept than utensil. The boy builds a fort from firewood and declarations. Ember naps, belly up, snoring like a distant storm. You watch dust float in the sunbeams and realize you haven't thought about electricity in 2 days, or Wi-Fi, or schedules, just wood, warmth, and whether Mira will let you have a second helping again tonight. Later you're told to help with laundry. This is less romantic than the stream scenes in old movies. It's cold, wet, and your knuckles go numb after 5 minutes. Mira works beside you like her fingers were built for water. You try to match her rhythm. You fail. She doesn't correct you. She just switches buckets and leaves you to suffer with dignity. That feels worse, somehow. You mutter to the soap root. It offers no sympathy. As the clothes dry on the line, the boy brings you a crown of weeds. For the laundry night, he says, you wear it, because what else can you do? Ember barks at a squirrel and nearly takes out the drying shirts. Mira saves them mid-fall, swears softly, and hands you a stick. You do. Like a hero whose kingdom is made of damp socks. Dinner is thin stew and thick bread. Mira adds herbs. The boy adds questions. You add silence, letting the warmth do the talking. Ember gets a bowl of scraps and looks deeply satisfied. Mira watches the pot boil down and says, "We'll need more by week's end." You offer to trade. She shrugs. "We'll see if they still like your buttons." You nod, already checking your coat sleeves for valuables. After dinner, you and the boy build a watch post out of crates and hay. Mira doesn't stop you. Ember joins the guard rotation and immediately falls asleep. You sit up there with the boy as the stars blink awake one by one. He points out the crooked one and says, "That's where the gods live." You nod, because why not? He leans against your shoulder. It's the first time he's done that without asking. Later, you lie down with straw in your shirt and wood dust under your fingernails. Mira is quiet. The boy mumbles something about skyworms again. Ember twitches in his sleep. You listen to the house, breathe around you, and whisper to the dark. If I vanish tomorrow, would they notice? Then you answer yourself, they would. Probably not with tears, but with chores that suddenly needed doing. You wake up to the sound of Mira arguing with a goose. It's not clear who started it, but based on the tone, you're betting on the goose. The boy is already outside with a stick. Not helping, just narrating. "Mother of feathers strikes again," he says, ducking as the goose flaps past in a fury. You roll over and briefly consider staying horizontal forever. Ember is curled at your feet, warm and entirely indifferent to the paltry politics unfolding beyond the door. You envy his priorities. You eventually drag yourself upright and limp toward the door, like an old knight going to war without armor. Mira waves a broom. The goose hisses. The boy throws crumbs and yells, "Diplomacy." The chaos ends with Mira tossing a bucket of water and declaring victory. You stand there holding a piece of dry bread, entirely unsure how to re-enter this world. Mira glares at the goose and mutters something about stew. You eat the bread silently. Today's job is fetching stones. Not exciting stones. Not valuable ones. Just round, flat, heavy rocks from the riverbed to reinforce the garden wall. Mira hands you a sack and says, "Bring back what doesn't argue." The boy offers to come, but gets distracted by a lizard. Ember trots behind you like he's planning to supervise. The walk to the river is quiet, the kind of quiet that isn't empty, just full of things not said out loud. At the river, you pick through rocks while Ember attempts to catch imaginary fish. You find 7 that seem acceptable, and 3 that might just be old potatoes. You pause to rest on a boulder, letting the sound of the current talk over your thoughts. The world here moves slower, but not without force. Everything's happening all the time, just under the surface. You sit with that a while. Then Ember barks at a stick and ruins the moment. You thank him anyway. Back in the village, Mira inspects the rocks, like a merchant inspecting coins. She grunts. That means they'll do. The boy asks if one can be his pet. Mira says only if he feeds it. The boy accepts the terms. You start setting the rocks into the base of the wall. It's awkward, slow work. Mira eventually takes over, muttering something about angles. You step aside and watch her hands move like they've done this in another life. Maybe they have. Lunch is lentils and dried carrot, boiled into a kind of paste you could use to fix the roof. You eat all of it. The boy mixes his with leftover cheese and declares it a new invention. Mira refuses to acknowledge this. Ember licks the bowl when no one's watching. You hand him the spoon. It's become your quiet deal. He guards you from the chickens. You sneak him flavor. In the afternoon, you patch a hole in the grain sack using instructions shouted by Mira from across the room. The boy offers suggestions. None are helpful. The needle slips 3 times. Your finger bleeds once. Mira finally takes the sack, mends it in 4 silent minutes, and hands it back without comment. You say, "I was getting there." She says, "Yes, in winter." Ember sneezes. You consider that a shared opinion. Someone's cart breaks near the edge of the village. Tom ropes you into helping. The axle's cracked, the wheel bent. You hold it in place while he hammers, cursing rhythmically. You learn new words. You promise not to use them around the boy. Tom says nothing, just hands you the hammer when his arms get tired. For a moment, it feels like trust, or maybe just sore shoulders. Either way, you don't drop it. Back home, Mira's making tea from leaves that smell like sleep. The boy is drawing maps on a scrap of bark, plotting the borders of his imaginary kingdom. You ask if you can live there. He says only if you build bridges. Mira says, he's not wrong. You sip your tea. It tastes like someone whispered comfort into hot water. You tell Mira. She ignores you but refills your cup. Dinner is thin but warm. The boy tries to tell a story and falls asleep halfway through a sentence. Ember leans against your leg like an old soldier at rest. Mira clears the bowls, humming something you almost recognize. You offer to help, she says. You've done enough, but she hands you a towel anyway. It's her way of saying you're not useless anymore. Later, you sit on the step outside, watching the moon climb through the branches. There are fewer stars tonight, but the ones that remain seem brighter, like they're trying harder on your behalf. You pull your coat tighter, listen to the soft shuffle of Mira tidying behind you, and the boy's gentle sleep breath like waves on a tiny shore, and you whisper, without meaning to, "I don't miss where I came from tonight." And the silence agrees. You wake up to birds fighting on the roof. Judging by the volume, they're arguing over property rights, and one of them is definitely losing. Mira is already dressed, feeding the fire and ignoring the aerial warfare above her. The boy is wrapped in his blanket like a cocoon, murmuring about swordfish and cabbage. Probably a dream, hopefully not a plan. Ember opens one eye, sneezes, and goes back to sleep like he knows something you don't. You get up and crack your neck. That's the extent of your morning luxury. Mira hands you a basket and says one word: herbs. You nod, despite not knowing which ones or where they are, or if she's even in the mood to tolerate questions. She points vaguely toward the hills and adds, "You'll know them when you smell them. You will not." But you set off anyway because here, ignorance is no excuse for staying still. The boy tries to follow. Mira stops him with a look. You almost say thank you. The hills are quieter than the village, in the way a held breath is quieter than a sigh. You walk past fields lined with rocks and scarecrows that don't scare anything. Birds sit on their arms like critics. The path curves into trees, and the light turns green and soft, like someone dimmed the world a little on purpose. You stop for a moment just to breathe. It smells like dirt and damp bark and possibility. You pretend you're a local. No one's around to call your bluff. You do find herbs, eventually, or plants that look her by enough. You pick the ones that smell like citrus and the ones that smell like regret. You hope Mira is in the mood for surprise. Along the way, you stumble across a patch of wild strawberries. You eat 2, put 3 in your pocket, and leave the rest like a prayer. The woods aren't quiet anymore. You hear birds, distant dogs, and the hum of bees who don't care about you. You take the long way home. Back at the house, Mira inspects the basket with the expression of someone judging a contest she didn't enter. She pulls out a handful, sniffs them, and grunts. Then she says, "Not deadly. Probably." You take that as praise. She adds a few of your finds to the pot, drops in a bone from yesterday, and mutters something about flavor. The boy demands a taste test. Mira hands him a spoon. He makes a face. You do not ask for a turn. You spend the afternoon scraping bark from firewood, which is somehow both boring and painful. Mira sharpens knives nearby, the sound rhythmic and just slightly threatening. The boy is building a fortress out of hay and ambition. Ember guards it fiercely until Mira throws a turnip at him. You watch all of this while your hands blister and your back tenses. You try humming. It helps a little. Later, you're asked to help in the garden. Mira hands you a hoe and a very specific set of instructions involving spacing, depth, and respect. You get 2 of those right. She corrects you without scolding, which is far worse. The boy plants something for the future. Mira snorts and says, "The future better grow fast." You feel that in your chest more than you should. Lunch is stew again, now with mystery herbs. It's better than usual. Mira doesn't mention it, but you catch her going back for seconds. The boy declares it magical. Ember tries to eat directly from the pot and gets a broom to the backside. You chew slowly, letting the flavor do the talking. No one says it out loud, but it's the first meal in a while that tastes like something deliberate. After lunch, you help the neighbor dig post holes. It's hard, dirty work. You sweat through your shirt and smash your thumb twice. The neighbor says, "You're not built for this." You say, "Neither was the post." He laughs, and for a moment, you feel like you've been accepted by the village. Not officially, but enough that your blisters now qualify as a dialect. Back home, the boy has fallen asleep in the garden. Mira drapes a cloth over him and sits beside him with a bowl of shelling peas. You offer to take over. She nods. You sit in the dirt, shelling in silence. the sun setting slow behind you. Ember lies between you both, breathing like a metronome. You don't say anything profound. You just keep working, and that feels like enough. Dinner is simpler, just bread, dried fruit, and boiled roots. The boy wakes halfway through to ask if he missed dessert. Mira hands him a carrot. He accepts it like it's cake. You sip water warmed by the fire and feel something settle in your ribs. Not pride, not satisfaction, just stillness. You're not used to it. It's nice. And that night, as the fire flickers and Mira sets down her mending with a sigh, you've come to recognize as almost content. You stretch out on your mat and whisper, "I'm tired but not empty." That has to count for something. And the room, with its creaks and quiet breathing, agrees. You wake up to Ember's tail slapping your face. It's a gentle betrayal, rhythmic, unbothered, and entirely unnecessary. He's dreaming, you think, about running or stealing bread, or leading an army of chickens. You shove him gently. He snorts, repositions himself on your ankle, and declares the matter resolved. The boy is already up, barefoot, outside, shouting at a tree for not blooming fast enough. Mira is grinding something with a mortar and pestle that sounds like it wants to escape. You roll over and brace for another day in paradise. Mira's tea today tastes like wet bark and someone's strong opinion about honesty. You drink it anyway. She says, "You'll help me at the mill." You nod, not because you understand what that entails, but because it's safer than asking. The boy volunteers too, but Mira says she needs someone to keep Ember from digging another tunnel under the fence. The boy accepts his mission with the seriousness of a monk. Ember looks unconvinced. The walk to the mill is longer than expected and louder than hoped. Mira doesn't talk much, but her steps say plenty. This is a place with rules, expectations, and people who measure things you didn't know could be measured. The air smells like flour and river water and sweat. The mill creaks like it's constantly reconsidering its purpose. You carry a sack of grain inside and are immediately hit with a wave of heat and dust that tries to become part of your lungs. The miller is a tall, silent man who nods once and hands you a shovel. No explanation. You follow Mira's lead, scooping, sorting, bagging, hauling. It's endless, circular work, like arguing with someone you love. Mira works faster than you. She always does. At one point you ask her if she ever gets tired. She says, "Only when I think." You consider asking what she thinks about. You don't. The silence is already doing the work. Midday, you break for bread and cheese that crumbles like it's holding a grudge. You eat quickly, back against a warm stone, listening to the river turn the wheel grind the grain becomes something useful. Mira drinks water from a shared flask and hands it to you without looking. The moment feels like a handshake, or a truce, or maybe just routine. It still matters. Back at the hut, the boy has constructed a fortress of mud and sticks. Ember is inside it, trapped by loyalty or confusion. The boy declares it a palace for our future army. Mira surveys the yard, the mud on the walls, and the missing wash bucket. "Wonderful," she says flatly. The boy beams. You help him clean up, which mostly means redistributing the mud in slightly less artistic patterns. Ember escapes, victorious but filthy. Later, Mira sends you to the neighbors with a bundle of cloth. You deliver it, exchange a few polite nods, and are gifted 3 eggs in return. One breaks on the walk back, because you tripped over a stump that wasn't there yesterday. Mira takes the remaining 2 without comment. You boil them for dinner. The boy gets one. Mira splits the other. You pretend you weren't hoping for a full one. Ember gets the shell. The evening is cool, quieter than usual. The boy draws in ash by the hearth, stick figures with swords and dramatically large hats. Mira mends a tear in the side of a blanket that's older than your memory of cities. You help stack firewood. For once, Mira doesn't inspect your work. You take it as a sign of either trust or resignation. Either way, you'll take it. Dinner is modest. Again, bread, the boiled egg, a few scraps of cheese, and Mira's unspoken understanding that this is enough. The boy talks about what it would be like to ride a horse, made of clouds. Mira tells him to eat with his mouth closed. You chew slowly, watching the firelight move across their faces, like it's trying to remember them. After the meal, you step outside. The stars are late tonight, hiding behind clouds or doubt. You look anyway. Some part of you still expects a sign, a comet, a glowing door, a phone signal. Nothing comes. Just wind in the trees and the faint sound of someone sharpening a blade 2 huts over. It's oddly comforting. And as you lie down on your mat, your back sore, your hands blistered, your mind oddly calm, you whisper, "I still don't know what I'm doing here, but I think I'd miss it if I left." And for the first time, you don't say it like a joke. You wake up to Mira muttering about mice. She's crouched near the grain sack, holding a broom like she's going to knight something or kill it, depending on how this ambush goes. You sit up, still half asleep, and the boy whispers, "She's been at it since dawn." You ask who's winning. He just shakes his head solemnly. Ember sniffs the corner and promptly loses interest, which tells you all you need to know about his work ethic. Breakfast is thin gruel with a suspicious crunch in it. You don't ask. Mira is already on her second bowl. The boy says it tastes like boiled secrets. You agree and swallow it like confession. Mira announces it's cleaning day, and everyone has a job. The boy tries to claim artistic exemption. Mira says, "Then paint the floor clean." He disappears. Ember follows. You grab a rag and prepare to lose another argument with dust. You're assigned the back wall. It hasn't been scrubbed in years, possibly centuries. You find 3 kinds of cobwebs and a dried lizard that's either a warning or a fossil. The soot comes off slowly, as if it's personally offended by your attempt at improvement. Mira scrubs beside you without complaint, the rhythm of her arms matching the sound of her breath. You keep pace, mostly. Occasionally, you pause to marvel at just how much grime can live on a single surface. At midday, Mira takes a break and hands you half a dried pear and some sharp cheese. It tastes like sunlight filtered through stone. The boy reappears holding a broom and wearing a tunic as a cape. He declares himself Sir Sweep-a-lot. Mira tells him to sweep or starve. He sweeps, badly. Ember finds a sock behind the water barrel and parades it around like he's found a relic. You don't have the heart to stop him. The rest of the afternoon is spent shaking out blankets and hauling water. You've never moved so much water in your life. It sloshes, it spills, it argues with your arms. Mira says nothing but hands you another bucket when you finish. The boy disappears again. Later you find him polishing a spoon and calling it his future mirror. You don't ask what for, you're afraid he'll tell you. By the time you sit down, your shirt is soaked, your knees ache, and your hands smell like soap and disappointment. Mira hands you a bowl of broth that's mostly hot water with herbs. You drink it like it's a feast. The boy tries to barter Ember's sock for extra bread. Mira tells him that's not currency in this house. He eats his portion without protest. That's growth. As the sun drops, Mira points to the roof. A patch came loose in the storm 2 nights ago. You climb up with a coil of twine and a handful of reeds. From up here, the village looks like something drawn by a child, lopsided, charming, full of hidden jokes. You watch smoke curl from chimneys and wonder how many of these homes have someone like Mira inside. Someone who holds everything together with dry hands and drier humor. You patch the roof. Poorly, but not fatally. Mira doesn't say much when you come down. Just a look. One of those looks that says, "You tried. I saw." That's enough. The boy offers you half a cookie he saved from market day. You take it. It's stale and perfect. Ember gets the crumbs and chokes slightly. Mira tells him not to be dramatic. He lies down and sulks. Dinner is late because cleaning never ends. You eat by lamplight, quietly, each of you chewing like you've earned it. Mira doesn't finish her bowl. You don't ask why. The boy is already snoring in the corner, one arm wrapped around the sock like a teddy bear. Ember stretches and kicks him in the head. He doesn't wake. That's trust. You step outside after. The stars are back, sharp, indifferent, beautiful. You sit on the step, elbows on your knees, and exhale like it's a job. You think about how many days you've been here. You don't know the number. It stopped mattering after the first week. Mira appears behind you, says nothing, just hands you a slice of something sweet and dense. You take it and you share it. And as the night leans in, and the fire flickers behind you, and Ember breathes like a small machine of warmth and loyalty, you whisper to yourself, "I used to wait for things to begin, but maybe this is what it looks like when they already have." And the quiet for once agrees. You wake up, and for the first time, you're not cold. Not warm either. But there's a tolerable in-between that feels like the universe finally stopped sneering. The blanket smells like smoke and Mira's soap, which is just crushed mint and suspicion. The boy is already up, balancing a pot on his head like it's a crown. Mira says nothing. Ember is licking the wall. You don't ask. That's growth. Breakfast is yesterday's gruel fried into something new, crisped around the edges, seasoned with what might be salt or might be last week's mystery herb. You eat it with both hands. Not out of tradition, but because the spoon's missing again, and you're too hungry to wait for justice. Mira says, "Today's the smokehouse." You nod. Of course it is. You still don't know what the smokehouse is. You'll find out when it's too late. The smokehouse sits at the edge of the woods, built into a hill, and smelling like firewood and secrets. Mira gives you a bundle of salted meat, wrapped in cloth, and a look that says, "Don't drop this, or I'll find a new use for your bones." You carry it with the delicacy of stolen treasure. Inside, it's dark, warm, and full of dangling things that look vaguely edible. The air clings to your clothes. It smells like history. Also fish. Mira shows you how to hang the cuts, how to stack the wood just so, how to test the heat with your palm and your patience. It's like building a fire, but sneakier. You work in silence for a while. Ember sniffs a corner and leaves, unimpressed. The boy attempts to invent smoke armor out of damp leaves and ash. Mira tells him to take that brilliance outside. He does. The woods accept him without comment. At midday, Mira gives you bread and pickles and a slice of smoked something that tastes like effort. You eat it gratefully. The boy eats his too fast and spends the next 10 minutes hiccuping like a frog with anxiety. Mira shakes her head. You quietly hand him your last bit of bread. He calls you a hero. You say, "Save the title until I survive the afternoon." Back in the village, you're sent to barter with the old weaver. Mira gives you a pouch of dried mushrooms and a stern warning. Only the soft red cloth. She'll try to trade you the green. You nod like you've done this before. You haven't. The weaver smells like dust and stories. She offers green first. You smile and ask for red. She sighs and gives you purple. You leave with it anyway. Mira won't be pleased, but the purple is nice. She inspects it when you return, says nothing, then uses it to line the inside of a pocket she's stitching. That's forgiveness. The boy calls it royal. Ember chews on a stick nearby, and occasionally glances up like he's managing all of you. You sit by the fire with your boots off, and the faint sense that you're slowly becoming functional in a place that once threatened to swallow you whole. Dinner is stew with actual meat, thick enough to coat your ribs, The boy adds wild onions. Mira doesn't stop him. You eat in silence, broken only by chewing and the occasional satisfied sigh. Ember gets a ladle's worth. He buries the bones, then digs them up again, just to remind them who's in charge. You stretch, full and sore, and Mira actually asks, "How's your back?" You answer honestly. She nods. That's a conversation now. Later, the boy draws maps on the back of a broken shutter. "For when we go on adventures," he says. You ask where to. "Somewhere no one's been yet." Mira murmurs. "Like a day without chores." You laugh. Even Ember sneezes at that one. The room hums with something warm. Not joy, too fragile a word, just ease. Earned, slow, rare. You step out for air. The sky is full of stars, the kind that seem impossibly close. You name one after the smokehouse. You name another after the boy's map. You name a third after Mira. Quietly, just for yourself. You lean on the door frame and let the night hold you. And as the fire dies low behind you and the dark settles soft against your shoulders, you think, "I used to count days like coins. Now I just carry them in my pocket and hope I never spend the last one." And somewhere inside, that thought feels heavier than fear and lighter than memory. You wake to the sound of chopping, not gentle, kindling chopping. This is someone taking an axe to a tree with the enthusiasm of a grudge-holding poet. You sit up, blink at the smoke-streaked rafters, and hear Mira muttering curses you don't recognize. The boy is still asleep, mouth open, hugging a small pile of hay like a beloved pet. Embers nowhere in sight. That's probably a bad sign. You stretch, slowly, everything creaks. That's a constant now. Mira walks in, carrying 2 logs, sweat on her forehead, and sawdust on her coat. She drops them by the hearth and says, "Wood day." You ask how much. She says, "All of it." The boy wakes up just in time to groan in protest. Mira hands him a hatchet. He stops groaning. Ember finally reappears, dragging half a branch through the doorway, like he personally defeated it in combat. Mira raises an eyebrow. At least someone understands the job. You spend the next few hours hauling logs from the edge of the woods, stacking them, splitting them, restacking them, and wondering how trees ever manage to grow if their destiny is to exhaust you. Mira works without stopping, her rhythm steady, precise. The boy swings his hatchet with great ceremony and little aim. Ember supervises, occasionally chasing a squirrel and returning proud but empty-jawed. You wipe sweat from your eyes with a sleeve that was clean yesterday. At one point, Mira hands you a bigger axe. No words, just an upward nod. You square your stance, grip the handle like it means something, and bring it down. The log splits on the second try. Mira gives you the smallest nod. It feels better than applause. The boy claps anyway. Ember barks. Possibly at the log, possibly at you. You bow. No one stops you. That counts as approval. Lunch is bread with garlic and roasted roots. You eat with your hands leaning against the pile of wood like you built it from scratch. Mira eats quickly, already eyeing the uncut stack. The boy tells a long, winding story about a wolf who became a baker and saved a village using only pies. You listen like it's gospel. Ember steals a turnip. Mira doesn't chase him. That's how you know she's tired. After lunch, you split more wood. Your arms burn. Your legs ache. Mira says nothing, but hands you a cloth when the blisters start. You wrap your palms and keep going. The boy gives up and builds a miniature village out of wood chips. Ember walks through it like Godzilla. The boy says, "At least now I can rebuild." You tell him that's the right attitude. He shrugs. "Also, I'm out of ideas." Later, you help Mira move the finished stack under the awning. It's heavy. Everything here is heavy, but it gets done. Mira surveys the wall of logs and says, "Good," then adds, "That'll last a week." You laugh until you realize she's serious. You sit down hard. Ember flops beside you and puts his head on your boot. Mira tosses you a cloth-wrapped something. Eat. You'll feel less sorry. It's honey bread. Crumbly, sweet, nearly sacred. You savor every bite. Mira sits beside you, chewing silently. The boy is humming again, some half-remembered tune from market day. The sun filters through the trees like it's trying to apologize for being late. You lean back, close your eyes, and let your body recover in slow pieces. The ache feels different now, like a tax you don't mind paying. Dinner is stew again, of course, but there's more garlic this time, and a sprinkle of herbs Mira won't name. The boy calls it warrior soup. Ember licks his bowl clean and then yours. You don't stop him. You're too tired to guard anything. Mira refills your cup without asking. You nod. She nods back. The fire crackles. No one speaks for a while. It's a good silence. Earned. Later, as the boy falls asleep mid-sentence and Ember twitches in his dreams, Mira sets her boots by the fire and sighs without complaint. You lie down, sore and strangely content, arms crossed behind your head like you're resting on something solid. The roof creaks. The world tilts toward dark. Your thoughts drift like smoke. And as your breath slows, you whisper, I didn't think a day full of chopping could feel like building something. And the quiet doesn't argue. You wake to the sound of rain. Not a storm, not a drizzle, just the persistent, unhurried tapping of 1,000 cold fingers on the roof. Ember is curled next to you like a warm boulder, blissfully unaware of the day's expectations. The boy is already up, whispering to the fire like he's trying to convince it to behave. Mira stirs a pot with one hand and rubs her temple with the other. Well, she says, no one's getting dry today. You believe her. Breakfast is hot porridge, the thick kind that sticks to your ribs and your moral compass. Mira adds herbs again, mint this time, or something close to it. The boy stirs his until it looks like a spell. Ember gets a spoonful and eats it with an enthusiasm that borders on suspicious. Mira hands you a damp cloth and points at the door. Smokehouse. Leaks. You nod, swallowing your last bite like a condemned man finishing dessert. The rain turns the yard into a patchwork of puddles and slick mud traps. Your boots are soaked by the second step. Mira walks like she's immune. The boy tries to leap between dry spots. Fails. Ember gallops through the worst of it, and then shakes dry like he's punishing you. The smokehouse looms ahead, sagging, steaming, a tired old beast, trying to outlive its bones. Mira pushes open the door with a grunt. Inside it smells like wet meat and ash. You find the leak quickly, a steady drip from a warped beam just above the hanging cuts. Mira sighs like she's been betrayed by the roof personally. You fetch reeds, wedges, and hope. It's patchwork work. Make do, make it hold, make it not worse. You and Mira trade tools in silence, the sound of dripping slowly giving way to muffled tapping above. The boy tries to help. You send him to guard Ember, who is currently eating moss. By midday, the worst of the leak is stopped. The boy declares you heroes. Mira says, let's see if it holds through tonight. You eat lunch under the awning, bread, onion, something pickled that might once have been joyful. The rain softens, then returns harder. The boy talks about building a boat. Mira tells him, if he finds nails, they'll talk. He looks inspired. You look worried. Back at the hut, everything smells damp. Mira lays out herbs to dry anyway. The boy disappears with a plank and his ambition. Ember follows him, clearly in favor of shipbuilding. You take the laundry line down before the rain can rip it free. Mira watches you do it without speaking. That's her version of trust. You hang the line inside above the fire. Clothes drip gently onto the floor. You place a bowl to catch it. The rhythm is oddly comforting. The rest of the afternoon passes slowly. Mira sharpens blades and checks seams. You mend a bucket handle using twine and guesswork. The boy returns soaked and triumphant, holding a crooked board nailed to another board. Boat, he says proudly. Mira nods. Sinker, she adds. He grins anyway. Ember sniffs it once and sneezes. No one disagrees. Dinner is hearty, all things considered. Dried beans, boiled roots, a splash of oil that Mira doles out like it's currency. You eat quietly, listening to the wind press at the shutters. The boy tells a story about a tree that grew upside down and bloomed fish. You ask questions. He answers with confidence and zero facts. Mira chuckles once, very quietly. You pretend not to notice. After the meal, you help dry the floor. The boy sketches sea monsters in the ash. Ember knocks over a boot and curls up in it like a message. Mira stands by the door, watching the rain and the dark, like she's listening for something. You ask what, she says. Just checking who's still out there. You don't ask if she means people or memories. Either way, the answer's the same, fewer than there used to be. You lie down next to the hearth, feet warmed by fading embers, Ember pressed close and snoring like a distant sawmill. The boy is already asleep, his drawings curling in the heat. Mira sits with her back against the wall, eyes half closed but not sleeping. You close your own slowly and think. Some days are for doing, others are for holding the roof together long enough to start again. And as the rain hushes into a rhythm, soft enough to let your breath fall in step, you whisper, "Today didn't break us. That's enough." And for once, the night holds you like it agrees. You wake to stillness, not silence. There's always a rooster somewhere with unresolved issues, but stillness, like the village itself, is taking a breath. The rain has stopped. The air smells of wet earth and something faintly green, the kind of smell that only shows up when things are trying to grow again. Mira is already at the hearth, stirring a pot and humming something too old to have a name. The boy is sitting cross-legged, trying to tie two spoons together with a bit of frayed rope. Ember is chewing on a shoe that no longer has hope. Breakfast is leftover stew and fresh bread. Mira doesn't say where the flour came from. You don't ask. The boy announces that today is a feast day, though he can't explain what for. Mira shrugs. Fine, but no dancing before noon. You eat slowly, letting the warmth of the bread do what words can't. Ember gets a scrap and wags his tail like he's been blessed. You believe him. After breakfast, you help Mira tend to the garden. The frost has finally lifted, and the soil gives under your boots like a promise. She shows you where to turn the earth, where not to step, how to coax green things from dirt with patience and water and the occasional threat. The boy plants a bean and names it George. Mira says, "Don't name the food." The boy says, "George is a survivor." You believe that too. Later, Tom arrives with a wheelbarrow full of old tools and a suspicious grin. "Trade day," he says. Mira eyes the goods with the focus of a hawk, choosing which rabbit is lying. You offer up a bundle of dried herbs and a carved spoon that's mostly symmetrical. Tom laughs. "You've been civilized." You say, "Barely." He takes the spoon. You get nails and a story in return. A fair deal. Lunch is simple. Onions, broth, something Mira calls almost chicken. The boy asks if it had feathers. Mira says, "Probably." You eat without complaint. Ember tries to climb onto the bench and is denied with a firm nudge. He sulks into a pile of rags and dreams of vengeance. The boy asks if you're staying forever. You say, "I haven't left yet." That's close enough to truth. In the afternoon, Mira sends you to the woods to collect kindling. The boy tags along, armed with a stick and heroic intentions. Ember patrols the edges, occasionally chasing shadows and returning victorious. The woods are bright and full of sounds you've come to recognize. Birds, bugs, wind through branches. You find yourself walking slower, not tired, just not rushing. It's the kind of peace that doesn't ask for anything in return. Back home, you stack the wood neatly, and Mira actually says, "Good." Not a grunt, not a glance, a word. You almost drop the next log from shock. The boy gives you a leaf crown. "For excellence," he says. Ember steals it immediately. You let him. Mira doesn't roll her eyes this time. That's practically applause. Dinner is a little better than usual. Mira used the last of the vinegar. The boy says it tastes like celebration. Mira says it tastes like finishing. You clean the bowls while she sits outside, eyes on the sky. The boy falls asleep, mid-hiccup. Ember curls beside him like punctuation. You bring Mira a cup of water and sit beside her, shoulder to shoulder, no words exchanged. The stars come out slowly, careful not to crowd the sky. The moon is thin and sharp, like it's listening. Mira finally says, "You could have left." You nod. She adds, "But you didn't." You nod again. That's all there is to it. That's everything. The wind is soft tonight. The village is quiet. Even the chickens have surrendered. Later, when the fire burns low and Ember shifts in his sleep, and the boy murmurs about dragons made of bread, you lie down and pull the blanket over your shoulder like a memory. You close your eyes and think, "I came here as a visitor. I'm not sure what I am now, but I know I belong to something." And as the night folds itself around the roof you helped mend, the floor you swept, and the people who stopped expecting you to leave, you whisper into the dark, "I didn't last a day. I stayed anyway."